The call came during dinner, right as I was cutting into my son's chicken nuggets because he insisted they were too big to eat. My mother's voice trembled on the other end of the line, something I hadn't heard since Dad passed. "Evie, sweetheart, I need you to come over tonight. It's important. I'm Evelyn Callahan, but everyone calls me Evie." At 39, I thought I'd seen every variation of family emergency possible, but something in Mom's voice made my stomach twist. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? Please come. Your brother's here. He has news." "Ryan." "Of course." My little brother had a talent for turning our lives upside down every few months. I glanced at my husband David, who was already nodding. He knew that look on my face. "We'll be there in 30 minutes, I promised, watching Sophie push her broccoli around her plate. "Should I bring the kids?" "No, better not," Mom said quietly. That's when I knew it was bad. The drive to Mom's house felt longer than usual. David kept squeezing my hand at red lights, probably trying to keep me from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. Last time Ryan had news, he'd lost his job and needed to crash on Mom's couch for just a few weeks. That turned into 6 months. When we pulled into Mom's driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar pink Volkswagen Beetle parked out front. Through the living room window, I could see Ryan pacing, his hands moving animatedly as he talked to someone I couldn't quite make out. "Whatever it is," David said, "we'll handle it together." I nodded, but that knot in my stomach only tightened as we walked to the door. Mom opened it before we could knock, her face pale and pinched. She hugged me too tight, whispering, "Just try to be understanding." The living room fell silent as we entered. Ryan stood there, looking both terrified and excited, a combination I'd learned to dread. Next to him sat a young woman I'd never seen before, her hand resting protectively over a slightly swollen belly. "Evie." Ryan's voice cracked slightly. "I want you to meet Chloe, my fiancée." The room started spinning slightly. "Fiancé?" Ryan hadn't mentioned dating anyone, let alone getting engaged. "And that belly?" "We're having a baby," Chloe announced, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And we're moving in with Margaret until we get on our feet. Isn't that wonderful?" I felt David's hand steady me as Mom sank into her favorite armchair, looking about 10 years older than she had this morning. And somehow, I knew this was just the beginning of our troubles. It took exactly 3 days for my mother's house to transform into what looked like a tornado had swept through a thrift store. Chloe's belongings seemed to multiply overnight, spreading across every surface like an invasive species. I stood in the doorway of what used to be Dad's study, now a makeshift storage room for shopping bags and half-unpacked boxes. "Mom's not sleeping," David said quietly behind me, holding 2 cups of coffee. He'd insisted on coming with me for our usual Sunday visit. "Have you noticed the circles under her eyes?" I had. Mom was trying to hide it, but the strain was showing. When I found her in the kitchen, she was scrubbing already clean dishes, her shoulders tense. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Of course, sweetheart." Her smile wavered. "Chloe's just particular about how things are done. Did you know she's redecorating the guest room? She says the wallpaper is depressing." The wallpaper Dad had picked out. I bit my tongue. From upstairs came the sound of Chloe's voice, sharp and clear. "Ryan, baby, could you ask your mom where she keeps her good jewelry? I want to show you something." My stomach clenched. Mom's hands stilled in the soapy water. "I'll handle it," I said, already heading upstairs. I found Chloe in Mom's bedroom, rifling through drawers while Ryan lounged on the bed, scrolling through his phone. "Oh, hi, Evie." Chloe's smile was sugar-sweet. "Just looking for inspiration. Margaret mentioned she had some beautiful vintage pieces, and since I'm going to be family, those drawers are private." I cut in, watching her perfectly manicured hands hover near Mom's jewelry box. "And it's Mom or Mother to you, not Margaret." "Don't start, Evie," Ryan sighed, not looking up. "Chloe's just trying to bond. By going through Mom's personal things? While she's downstairs washing your dishes." Chloe's expression hardened. "You know what your problem is, Evie? You think you're the only one who knows what's best for this family. But guess what? You're not in charge here." "No, but I care about my mother's well-being. When's the last time either of you asked how she's doing?" "We're giving her a grandchild," Chloe snapped, one hand protectively over her belly. "That's more than you've done lately." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan finally looked up, his face pale. "Chloe, that's enough." But I'd seen it, the flash of satisfaction in her eyes when she'd said it. This wasn't about bonding or family. This was about power. "You're right," I said quietly. "I'm not in charge. But this isn't over." As I left, I heard Chloe's light laugh. Your sister really needs to lighten up, baby. Stress isn't good for anyone, especially at her age. I closed my hands into fists, already planning my next move. This woman had no idea who she was dealing with. The credit card statement sat on my kitchen table like a bomb waiting to explode. Mom had called in tears, asking if I could help her make sense of her bills. Now I understood why. Scattered across the pages were charges I knew Mom would never make. Designer boutiques, high-end spa treatments, and something called luxury baby essentials. My hands shook as I dialed Mom's number. Before I could say anything, she whispered, "I didn't want to cause trouble, Evie. Chloe said she'd pay it back. How much has she spent?" The silence stretched. "Almost 12,000. I grabbed my keys, but David caught my arm. "Think this through," he warned. "If you go over there angry, she's stealing from our mother, David. What am I supposed to do?" The mail truck pulled up outside, and through the window, I watched our carrier stuff several envelopes into our box. Something made me walk out to check it. Among our bills was a letter addressed to Ryan at Mom's house, marked urgent, final notice from a collection agency. When I arrived at Mom's, I found Ryan alone in the garage, half-heartedly sorting through boxes. His eyes landed on the letter in my hand. "That's private," he said quickly. "Like Mom's credit card is private?" His face fell. "What are you talking about?" I thrust Mom's statement at him. He scanned it, color draining from his face. "This has to be a mistake." Chloe wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Chloe appeared in the doorway, her pregnancy now more visible under a new designer dress. "Oh, are we having a family meeting? Did you use Mom's credit card without permission?" Chloe's smile didn't waver. "Margaret gave me her card for baby expenses. We're family now, remember? $12,000 worth? The baby needs parents who aren't thieves," I snapped, turning to Ryan. "And what's this collection notice about?" "More secrets." Ryan's shoulders slumped. "I owe some people money. From before. I thought I could figure it out before." "Before what? Before they came looking? Before Mom had to bail you out again." "You don't understand," he said, voice cracking. "I'm going to be a father. I need to fix this. Then start by being honest. Mom's health is suffering, she's drowning in debt that isn't hers, and you're hiding from collection agencies in her house. At least he's trying." Chloe stepped between us. "Unlike some people, Ryan actually wants this baby. Unlike you, who couldn't even." Ryan grabbed her arm. "Stop. Please." I saw tears in his eyes, real fear. For the first time, I wondered if my brother was as trapped as Mom was. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "All of us. No more secrets." But Chloe was already pulling Ryan away, whispering in his ear, and I knew this was far from over. I found Mom sitting in Dad's old armchair, clutching something in her hands. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The house was quiet. Ryan and Chloe had gone to yet another doctor's appointment in their new car, bought with who knows whose money. "Mom!" I touched her shoulder gently. "What's wrong?" She opened her hands to reveal Dad's pocket watch, its gold surface dulled with age. "I found this while cleaning. Your father always said." Her voice broke. "He said to keep it safe for when Ryan grew up enough to appreciate it." The watch had been Dad's pride and joy, passed down through 3 generations. Now it sat there like an accusation of all our failures. "I got a call from Dr. Chin today," Mom said quietly, still staring at the watch. Her next words made my blood run cold. "My blood pressure is through the roof. He wants me in the hospital for observation." "What? Why didn't you call me right away?" "Because I knew what you'd say." She finally looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "That I need to stop enabling them. That I'm letting them take advantage. But Evie, he's my son. And that baby." A door slammed downstairs, followed by Chloe's laugh and the rustle of shopping bags. Mom quickly wiped her eyes. "Don't tell them about the hospital," she whispered. "Please. I don't want to worry anyone." "Mom, this has to stop. You're literally making yourself sick." "Margaret," Chloe's voice carried upstairs. "We got the most adorable nursery furniture. Could you come look at the catalog? We just need your signature on a few things." Mom stood up, smoothing her shirt with shaking hands. But before she could move, I grabbed the watch and blocked the doorway. "No more signatures," I said firmly. "No more catalogs. No more pretending everything's fine while they bleed you dry. Evie, please. Dad wouldn't want this." "You know he wouldn't." Footsteps on the stairs. Ryan appeared first, then Chloe, both freezing when they saw my expression. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, his eyes falling to the watch in my hand. Something flickered across his face, shame, maybe, or recognition. "Mom's going to the hospital," I said, ignoring her small sound of protest. Her blood pressure's dangerously high. And you two are going to listen very carefully to what happens next. Hospital? Chloe stepped forward, one hand on her belly. But who's going to help us with the nursery? What you need, I cut in, is to grow up. Both of you. Because this ends now, or I swear to God, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing to this family. The watch felt heavy in my hand, like Dad's judgment weighing down on all of us. And for once, Ryan didn't look away. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I paced outside Mom's room. They'd admitted her after her blood pressure spiked dangerously high during what should have been a routine checkup. David sat nearby, fielding calls from family while I waited for Ryan and Chloe to show up. 3 hours and counting. A nurse emerged from Mom's room. She's asking for Ryan again. I checked my phone, no response to my 5 messages. He's on his way. I lied, the words tasting bitter. That's when I saw him. Not Ryan, but Marcus Chun, Ryan's old college roommate, hurrying down the hall with a worried expression. He stopped short when he saw me. Evie, I was looking for Ryan. He's not answering his phone. Join the club. What's going on? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, I probably shouldn't be here, but those people Ryan owes money to? They're not exactly patient types. They came by my place looking for him. My stomach dropped. What kind of people? The kind who break things. And people. He handed me a crumpled envelope. Found this in my mailbox. It's addressed to Ryan, but inside was a single photo, Ryan and Chloe at a casino, dated 3 days ago. While Mom lay in a hospital bed, they were gambling. Mrs. Callahan? A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand. We need to discuss your mother's condition. Her heart. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Sorry, can't make it. Chloe not feeling well. Handle it for me? Something inside me snapped. I thrust the casino photo at David and headed for the parking lot, ignoring his calls to wait. I knew exactly where they'd be. That pink Volkswagen was impossible to miss in Mom's driveway. I found them in the kitchen. Chloe was painting her nails while Ryan sorted through Mom's mail. The hospital called. Chloe said without looking up. Everything okay? No, I said quietly. Nothing is okay. Mom's heart is failing, there are loan sharks looking for Ryan, and you're sitting here painting your nails with money you stole from her. Ryan's head snapped up. Loan sharks? How did you? Marcus came to the hospital. The hospital where our mother is fighting for her life while you two hit the casino. We needed money to pay them off, Ryan stammered. If we won enough. Get out. My voice shook. Both of you. Get out of this house before I call the police. You wouldn't, Chloe sneered, one hand on her belly. Not with the baby. Try me. Because right now, I'm thinking that baby might be better off without either of you. The silence that followed was deafening. And in that moment, watching the fear finally register on their faces, I realized I meant every word. The hospital conference room felt too small for all the anger it contained. Ryan sat across from me, his face pale and drawn, while Chloe paced near the window. David stood by the door like a sentinel, making sure no one left until we sorted this mess out. The police are already investigating the credit card fraud, I said, laying out papers on the table. But I'm willing to talk them down if you both agree to some conditions. Conditions? Chloe's laugh was sharp. You're not in charge here, Evie. You can't. Mom's awake, I cut in. And she's given me power of attorney. So yes, I am in charge. Ryan's head snapped up. She what? She signed the papers this morning. After I showed her the casino photo. After I explained about the loan sharks. You had no right, he whispered. Someone had to protect her from you too. Chloe stopped pacing. Fine. What are your precious conditions? First, you both get jobs. Real ones. Second, you move out of Mom's house. Third, a knock at the door interrupted me. A nurse poked her head in. Mrs. Callahan? Your mother's asking for you. Her blood pressure's spiking again. I stood, but Chloe blocked my path. We're not done here. You don't get to dictate our lives just because. Move, I said quietly. Or I swear to God I'll. You'll what? She stepped closer, one hand protectively over her belly. Hit a pregnant woman? Call the cops? Go ahead. But remember, if we go down, your precious mother goes down too. Her name's on everything. The room went silent. Ryan looked between us, conflict written across his face. You wouldn't, I said, but my voice shook. Try me. Chloe smiled, and for the first time, I saw something truly dangerous in her eyes. We can drag this out in court. Every detail about Margaret's declining mental state, her poor financial decisions, her inability to say no to her children. How long do you think she'll last under that kind of stress? My hands trembled. She had us cornered and she knew it. Mom would never survive a lengthy court battle. Ryan. I turned to my brother, pleading. Please, don't let her do this. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Evie. I can't. We need. Another knock. Mrs. Callahan? Your mother's asking for you. It's urgent. I pushed past Chloe, my vision blurring with tears of rage and helplessness. At the door, I turned back one last time. You win, I said quietly. But remember something. That baby you're using as a shield? Someday, they'll see you both for exactly what you are. Chloe's smile never wavered. Maybe. But by then, it'll be too late for any of you to do anything about it. I found Ryan alone in the hospital chapel at midnight, his head in his hands. The room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Mom's condition had stabilized, but the doctor's words hung heavy in the air. She needs peace and quiet to recover. Chloe's gone, Ryan said without looking up. My steps echoed as I approached. What do you mean, gone? She took the car. And Mom's jewelry. Left a note saying she'd contact me about the baby. His voice cracked. Said she never wanted this life anyway. I should have felt triumph. Instead, watching my little brother break apart, I felt nothing but exhaustion. The loan sharks, he continued. They weren't after me. They were after her. She's done this before to other families. Gets pregnant, moves in, bleeds them dry. Ryan. I knew. He finally looked up, tears streaming down his face. I knew something wasn't right, but I was so scared of being alone again. Of failing. Like Dad said I would. The chapel door creaked open. We both turned to see a man standing there, older and grayer than I remembered, but unmistakable. Dad! Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. Our father stepped into the light. Margaret's nurse called me. Said things had gotten bad. Why are you here? I demanded, stepping between him and Ryan. You lost the right to be here when you walked out. Because I was wrong, Dad said quietly. About everything. Especially about you, Ryan. Ryan stood, swaying slightly. You said I'd never amount to anything. That I'd just drag everyone down with me. I know. And look what that did to you. To all of us. I proved you right, didn't I? Ryan laughed bitterly. Lost everything. Hurt everyone. Just like you said. No. I grabbed Ryan's arm. You made mistakes. We all did. But you're here now, facing it. That's more than some people ever do. Dad took a step forward. Your sister's right. I ran away from my mistakes. You're standing here facing yours. It's too late, Ryan whispered. Mom's sick, Chloe's gone, the baby. It's not too late, I said firmly. But you have to choose, Ryan. Right now. Are you going to run like Dad did? Or stay and fight? The silence stretched between us, heavy with 20 years of hurt and hope. Finally, Ryan straightened up, wiping his eyes. I want to fix this, he said. I don't know how, but I want to try. Then we'll figure it out together, I said, taking his hand. That's what family does. Dad turned to leave, understanding he wasn't part of this moment. But Ryan's voice stopped him. Wait, he called. Maybe we all need to learn how to fix things. 6 months later, I sat in Mom's garden, watching Ryan teach Lucas how to plant tomatoes. Mom rested in her favorite chair nearby, looking healthier than she had in years. The police had caught up with Chloe in Arizona. Apparently, we weren't her first target, just her last. The social worker called, David said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. Chloe signed the papers. I nodded, watching Ryan's gentle patience with Lucas. Who would have thought my brother would find his calling teaching kids at the community center? Full custody? Yes. Ollie's officially coming home next week. The baby carrier sat empty beside Mom's chair, waiting. We'd all been taking turns caring for Ollie since Chloe abandoned him at a fire station 3 months ago. Even Dad helped, though his visits were still awkward, filled with careful conversations and cautious hope. Look what I found, Mom called, holding up an envelope. It was in your father's study, dated just before everything happened. Inside was a letter and a bank statement. My hands trembled as I read. My dear children, I've watched you both struggle. Ryan with his fears, Evie with her need to fix everything. I should have told you both. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to need help. I've set aside some money for both of you, but more importantly, I've set aside my pride. Whatever happens, remember that healing isn't about being right. It's about being there. Love, Mom. The bank statement showed 2 accounts, one for Ryan's fresh start, one for Ollie's future. You knew. I looked at Mom. About Chloe? About everything. I knew something wasn't right, she said quietly. But sometimes people need to find their own way to the truth. even if it hurts watching them get there. Ryan approached, dirt on his knees, Lucas proudly trailing behind him. The tomatoes are planted, though I can't promise they'll survive. That's okay, Mom smiled. Gardens take practice. And patience. Sophie appeared from the house, carrying a squirming Ollie. He's awake. Can I show him the flowers? As I watched my daughter carefully introduce her cousin to each bloom, I realized something. Revenge hadn't saved our family. Truth had. Painful, messy truth, followed by the harder work of rebuilding. Hey, Ryan touched my arm. Thank you for not giving up on me. That's what family does, I said, echoing words from that night in the chapel. We figure it out together. Mom reached for Dad's hand as he joined us, their fingers linking carefully, tentatively. Like the tomato plants, like all of us, testing new ground and hoping something good would grow. It wasn't perfect, but maybe that was exactly what we needed all along.
The box of memories crashed to the floor, scattered photographs and precious mementos spreading across the cold tile like wounded memories. My mother-in-law, Elena, stood there, her face a mixture of triumph and calculated malice. You think these matter, she sneered, watching me fall to my knees among the remnants of my past. My name is Maya Winters, and at 32, I was about to discover that some family battles are won not through confrontation, but through patience and strategic precision. The destruction of my childhood memories wasn't a sudden impulse. It was the culmination of years of calculated manipulation, a calculated attempt to erase my identity, my roots, my very existence within the family narrative. Elena had always made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her son, Michael. From the moment we married, she treated me like an intruder, someone who didn't belong in their meticulously crafted family image. But today, she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I remember the first time I realized how deeply she despised me. It was during our wedding rehearsal. While other mothers were helping their daughters-in-law adjust veils and calm wedding nerves, Elena was whispering subtle criticisms to Michael. She's not from our social circle, she'd say. Are you sure about this? My background wasn't elite or wealthy. I came from a small town, worked my way through college, and built my career through sheer determination. To Elena, that translated to not good enough. But what she didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment long before she realized a war was brewing. As I knelt among the scattered photographs, my mind raced through the careful documentation I had been collecting. Text messages, recorded conversations, emails, a comprehensive archive of Elena's manipulative behavior. Michael, my husband, stood in the doorway, shock etched across his face. "Mom, what have you done?" he whispered, his voice a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. Elena's laugh was cold, calculated. "Cleaning up," she said. "These old photographs, these remnants of her past, they don't belong in our family album." Our family album. Those words hung in the air, dripping with possessiveness and control. "These are my memories," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotion swirling inside me. "My life before I met your son." Elena waved her hand dismissively. "Irrelevant," she muttered. "We'll create a new narrative, one that fits our family's image." What she didn't realize was that I had been collecting evidence, not just of her current actions, but of a pattern of manipulation that stretched back years. Screenshots of text messages where she tried to undermine my relationship with Michael. Recordings of conversations where she'd subtly poisoned his mind against me. My professional background in digital forensics wasn't just a career. It was about to become my most potent weapon. As Michael helped me gather the scattered memories, I could see the conflict in his eyes. Years of his mother's conditioning were being challenged, and the foundations of his understanding were crumbling. "Why would you do this?" he asked Elena, his voice breaking. "For the family," she responded, as if that explained everything. Some things are better left in the past. But I knew the truth. This wasn't about protecting the family. This was about control, about maintaining a narrative that she had carefully constructed over decades. That night, as Michael and I sat in our home, surrounded by the few photographs I had managed to salvage, I made a decision. This wouldn't be a moment of defeat. This would be a catalyst. "We need to talk," I said to Michael, spreading out the initial evidence I had gathered. "About your mother, about her pattern of behavior, and about our future." His eyes met mine, a mixture of fear and growing understanding. Little did Elena know, her attempt to erase my past was about to become the very instrument of her downfall. Every scattered photograph, every torn memory was a piece of evidence, a fragment of a much larger story that was about to unfold. The war had begun, and I was more than prepared. As the night deepened and Michael processed the magnitude of his mother's actions, I began meticulously organizing my strategy. Each piece of evidence, each documented interaction was a weapon, carefully chosen and precisely aimed. Elena thought she was eliminating my past. Instead, she was about to become the architect of her own exposure. The first phase of my plan was already in motion, and she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I arrived at my digital forensics office earlier than usual, my mind a calculated storm of strategies. Elena's attempt to erase my past had transformed from a personal violation into a meticulously planned mission of exposure. My colleague David noticed my intensity immediately. "Something's different," he observed, sliding a cup of coffee across my desk. "You look like you're about to launch a full-scale investigation." If only he knew how accurate that observation was. I began compiling a comprehensive timeline of Elena's manipulative behaviors. Text messages, email threads, recorded conversations. Each piece of evidence was a carefully placed puzzle piece revealing a pattern of emotional manipulation that extended far beyond just me. Michael's support was crucial. The night after Elena's destructive rampage, he had finally seen through his mother's carefully constructed facade. "I can't believe I didn't see it before," he had whispered, his hands trembling as he looked through the documented evidence. My strategy wasn't about revenge. It was about exposure, about breaking a generational cycle of toxic control that had defined his family dynamics for decades. The first step was gathering irrefutable evidence. I knew Elena's manipulation wasn't just limited to our relationship. I suspected her control extended to other family members, creating a web of psychological manipulation that had gone unchallenged for years. I reached out to Michael's cousins, distant relatives who had always seemed uncomfortable during family gatherings. My initial conversations were careful, designed to open doors without appearing confrontational. "Do you remember when Aunt Elena managed to prevent Sarah from pursuing her art career?" I would casually ask, watching their reactions. The responses were revealing. Hushed confirmations, years of suppressed frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Each conversation added another layer to the growing documentation of Elena's systemic emotional control. My professional skills became my most potent weapon. Digital forensics wasn't just my job. It was an art form of uncovering hidden truths. I began tracking Elena's digital footprint, understanding her communication patterns, her methods of manipulation. Bank statements revealed subtle financial manipulations, property transfers that seemed innocuous but hinted at a deeper pattern of control. Each document was meticulously saved, cross-referenced, verified. Michael was both my ally and my greatest challenge. Years of maternal manipulation had created deep-rooted psychological patterns that couldn't be undone overnight. "She always said she was doing this for our own good," he would say, his voice a mixture of pain and emerging clarity. I would respond with patience. Controlling behavior isn't protection. It's a form of emotional abuse. Slowly, methodically, we began building a comprehensive case, not just against Elena, but for Michael's own healing and understanding. My approach wasn't about destroying Elena. It was about revealing the truth, breaking a cycle of generational manipulation that had wounded multiple family members. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A cousin, Sarah, the one Elena had previously prevented from pursuing her art career, agreed to meet me. Over coffee, her story unfolded. Elena had systematically undermined her dreams, using guilt and emotional manipulation to keep her trapped in a career she never wanted. She told me I would embarrass the family if I became an artist, Sarah revealed, tears forming in her eyes. She made me believe I wasn't good enough. Each revelation added another layer to our growing documentation. This wasn't just about me. This was about a pattern of control that had damaged multiple lives. Michael's transformation was profound. With each piece of evidence, with each revealed truth, he was deprogramming years of maternal conditioning. "I thought her control was love," he said one evening, his voice breaking. "I never realized how toxic it was." The digital evidence was mounting. Screenshots of manipulative text messages, recordings of conversations that revealed calculated emotional manipulation, financial documents showing subtle forms of control. But I wasn't interested in public humiliation. My goal was exposure, understanding, and ultimately healing. As we compiled the documentation, I realized this was bigger than a personal conflict. This was about breaking a cycle of generational trauma, about giving voice to those who had been silently suffering. Elena had no idea what was coming. Her attempt to destroy my memories had awakened a force she couldn't comprehend, a systematic, compassionate exposure of her lifelong pattern of emotional manipulation. The final pieces were falling into place. Family members who had been isolated, dreams that had been crushed, potential that had been stifled. All were becoming part of a narrative of understanding and liberation. Michael looked at me one evening, a newfound clarity in his eyes. "How do you stay so calm?" he asked. I smiled. Because true power isn't about destruction. It's about understanding, exposing the truth, and creating space for healing. Little did Elena know, her attempt to erase my past was about to become the very instrument of her own exposure. The investigation was almost complete, and the final phase was about to begin. A reckoning was coming, not with anger, but with the most powerful weapon of all, the unvarnished truth. The family gathering was meticulously planned, not by Elena, but by me. Each invitation, each carefully orchestrated detail was designed to create a moment of ultimate revelation. Michael's entire extended family arrived at the sprawling family estate, cousins, aunts, uncles, many of whom had been isolated or manipulated by Elena over the years. She believed this was just another typical family reunion. She had no idea she was walking into the most significant moment of her life. I sat quietly, watching Elena move through the room with her usual air of superiority. She didn't know that every person in this room now held a piece of documented evidence of her manipulative behavior. Michael stood beside me, his hand finding mine, a silent testament to the journey we had undertaken together. "Are you ready?" I whispered. He nodded, a calm determination replacing the years of uncertainty and maternal manipulation. As dinner was served, the tension was palpable. Elena continued her performance of the perfect matriarch, unaware that her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. I stood up, glass in hand, interrupting her mid-sentence. "I'd like to share something with everyone," I said, my voice calm and clear. The room fell silent. Elena's smile froze. I began sharing stories, not with anger, but with a compassionate clarity that exposed the depth of her manipulation. The cousin whose art career was destroyed. The aunt who was prevented from pursuing her dream job. The family members who had been systematically isolated and controlled. Each story was accompanied by documented evidence, screenshots, recordings, financial documents, a comprehensive record of Elena's lifelong pattern of emotional manipulation. "This isn't about punishment," I explained. "This is about understanding, about breaking a cycle of control that has hurt this family for generations." Elena's face went through a remarkable transformation. Shock, then denial, then a desperate attempt to regain control. "You're lying," she stammered. "This is a conspiracy." But the evidence was irrefutable. Family members who had been silent for years began sharing their own experiences. Tears, realizations, moments of collective understanding swept through the room. Michael stepped forward. "Mom," he said, his voice firm but not angry, "we're not destroying you. We're giving you a chance to understand the damage you've caused." The most powerful moment came when Sarah, the cousin whose art career had been crushed, spoke up. She shared her journey of rediscovery, of healing, of finally pursuing her dreams. "For years, I believed I wasn't good enough," she said, her voice breaking. "But I've learned that my worth isn't determined by fear or control." Elena's breakdown was not dramatic. It was a quiet unraveling, a moment of profound realization of the pain she had caused. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened. The family began to reconnect, not through Elena's control, but through genuine understanding and compassion. Michael turned to me, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for helping me see the truth." I squeezed his hand. "This was never about defeating your mother. This was about healing." The aftermath was transformative. Elena was not ostracized but offered therapy, a chance to understand her behavior. Some family members chose to maintain distance, others opened the door to potential reconciliation. For me, the victory was not in destruction, but in liberation. The childhood memories Elena had tried to destroy became a catalyst for family healing. Months later, Sarah had her first art exhibition. Michael had begun therapy to understand the years of manipulation. The family was slowly, beautifully rebuilding itself. Elena's control had been her greatest weakness. Her belief that she could manipulate and erase became the very instrument of her exposure. As I looked at the family photographs, the ones Elena had tried to destroy, now carefully restored and displayed, I realized that some memories cannot be erased. They can only be understood, processed, and transformed. The scattered photographs that once represented pain were now a testament to resilience, to the power of truth, and to the incredible strength of a family choosing healing over hurt. My mother-in-law thought she could destroy my past. Instead, she had helped me reclaim my future, and the future of an entire family. The ultimate revenge, I realized, was not destruction. It was compassion. It was understanding. It was freedom. The phone call came just as I was preparing my monthly medication, my hands carefully measuring out the precise dosage that kept my rare genetic condition in check. Maya's voice dripped with a mixture of triumph and malice, each word like a knife twisting into my already fragile world. "Your medical treatment fund? Gone," she announced, her laughter echoing through the speaker. "Mom and I decided it would be better used for something more productive. I'm Olivia Chin, 32 years old, battling a genetic disorder that requires expensive monthly treatments. My entire life had been a delicate balance of medical management and financial planning. That fund wasn't just money, it was my lifeline." "Excuse me?" I kept my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. "Oh, come on," Maya continued, her tone dismissive. "You've been living off family support for years. The fund was just sitting there, and frankly, we have better uses for it. Tiffany's college tuition, my wedding expenses." I listened in stunned silence as she continued to rationalize the theft. My sister-in-law had always resented me, viewing my medical condition as an inconvenience to the family. But this was a new level of cruelty. The fund had been carefully established by my parents before they passed away. Knowing my condition would require lifelong management, they'd set up a trust specifically to ensure I could always access the best medical care. It wasn't a handout, it was a carefully planned safety net. "You can't do this," I finally managed to say. Maya's laugh was cold. "Already done. Mom and I have power of attorney, remember. The money's been transferred. Consider it a family investment." The call ended, leaving me staring at the medication in my hand. Each vial represented thousands of dollars, each dose a carefully calculated lifeline that kept me functioning, kept me alive. My mind raced. The treatment for my condition wasn't optional, it was essential. Without it, my health would rapidly deteriorate. The monthly costs were astronomical, running into tens of thousands of dollars. The fund wasn't just savings, it was my literal lifeline. I thought about my medical history. Diagnosed at 16, I'd watched my condition slowly progress. Determined to not be defined by my illness, I'd built a life for myself. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, adapting my work to my health limitations. Every project was a testament to my resilience, my ability to thrive despite the challenges. But Maya and my mother-in-law had always seen me differently. To them, I was a burden, someone constantly requiring family support. They'd made snide comments at family gatherings, subtle jabs about my medical expenses, their resentment barely concealed beneath forced politeness. My husband, Michael, had always been my buffer, but he was currently on a critical work assignment overseas, unreachable for the next few days. I knew calling him would only cause unnecessary stress. I pulled out the medical file, reviewing the detailed breakdown of my treatment costs. Each line item was a stark reminder of my reality. The genetic specialists, the monthly infusions, the specialized medications, nothing was cheap, nothing was optional. A plan began to form in my mind. Maya thought she'd won, that her betrayal was complete. But she underestimated me. She'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just a patient. I was a strategist. My first call was to Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer who had helped draft the original trust. His voice was grave as I explained the situation. "They've overstepped," he confirmed. "The trust has specific stipulations about its use. This isn't just unethical. It could be legally actionable. But taking legal action would take time. And time was something I couldn't afford, not with my medical treatment hanging in the balance." I spent the next few hours gathering documentation. Bank statements, medical records, the original trust documents. Each piece of paper was a weapon, carefully collected and organized. Maya had made a fundamental mistake. She thought she knew everything about my life, my condition. But there were depths to my preparation she couldn't imagine. As the evening settled, I looked at my medication, then at the growing file of documents. Maya thought she'd stolen my future, but she was about to learn that I'd been preparing for this moment long before she even considered her betrayal. My fingers hovered over my phone. The first move was critical, and I was going to make sure it counted. The game was just beginning. The morning light filtered through my home office, casting a soft glow on the meticulously organized documents spread across my desk. I'd spent the entire night preparing, each piece of paper a calculated weapon in the war Maya had unknowingly declared. My first call was to Michael's colleague, Sarah, who could reach him internationally. "I need you to have Michael contact me urgently," I explained, my voice calm but purposeful. "It's about the family trust." While waiting, I began making strategic calls. The Medical Research Foundation that had been supporting my treatment research received my first communication. I detailed the potential interruption to my treatment fund, requesting documentation of my critical medical needs. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, my primary genetic specialist, was my next call. "I need a comprehensive medical impact statement," I told her, detailing the exact consequences of any treatment interruption. By noon, my phone buzzed. Michael's voice was filled with concern. "Liv, what's happening?" I explained everything methodically. Michael knew my family dynamics well. His initial anger was palpable. "They can't just do this," he muttered. "They think they can," I responded. "But I'm 3 steps ahead." My research into Maya's recent activities revealed something interesting. She'd been experiencing financial difficulties. Her husband had recently lost his job, and their lavish lifestyle was under significant strain. The medical treatment fund would be a temporary solution to their mounting bills. I compiled a detailed timeline, bank transfers, communication logs, everything that would demonstrate the unauthorized use of my trust fund. Mr. Harrison had been right. This wasn't just unethical. It was potentially criminal. By evening, I had a comprehensive file, medical records showing the critical nature of my treatment, financial documentation proving the misappropriation of funds, legal documents outlining the specific terms of the trust. Maya called again that evening, her tone significantly less triumphant. "I hope you're not planning to make a big deal about this," she said, a nervous edge creeping into her voice. "Oh, I'm definitely making a deal about this," I replied softly, but not in the way you might expect. My plan wasn't about revenge. It was about protection, protecting myself, my medical treatment, and exposing the true nature of their betrayal. I reached out to other family members, not to gain sympathy, but to provide documented evidence. My Aunt Margaret, always the family mediator, was particularly helpful. "I'll gather statements from other family members about the trust's original purpose," she promised. Michael returned home early, cutting short his work trip. His presence was a silent support, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. "They thought you'd be helpless," he said, reviewing the documents. "They don't understand how strong you are." The next morning, a certified letter was sent to Maya and my mother-in-law. It wasn't a threat. It was a precise, legally crafted document outlining the potential consequences of their actions. Mr. Harrison had helped me draft it perfectly. Each paragraph was a carefully placed chess move, demonstrating our preparedness and resolve. Meanwhile, I continued my medical treatments. Each infusion was a testament to my resilience, a quiet defiance against those who would see me as a burden. The Medical Research Foundation added weight to my case. Their statement detailed the potential long-term health impacts of interrupting my specialized treatment, a document that would be difficult to ignore in any legal proceedings. 3 days after my initial discovery, the first cracks appeared in Maya's confidence. Her husband discovered the potential legal implications of their actions. Panic began to set in. My phone rang. It was Maya, her previous smugness replaced by desperation. "We can explain," she started. "No explanation needed," I responded. "Your actions will speak for themselves." The groundwork was laid. Each document, each communication was a carefully placed domino, and soon they would start to fall. Maya didn't realize something crucial. This wasn't about winning. This was about protection, about ensuring my continued health and exposing the betrayal for what it was. As evening fell, Michael squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked at him, a small smile playing on my lips. I'm more than okay. I'm prepared. The next move was about to begin, and Maya had no idea what was coming. The family gathering was tense, awkward, exactly as I had planned. Large mahogany table, strategically chosen neutral territory at my Aunt Margaret's house. Maya and her mother sat on one side, looking increasingly uncomfortable. My legal documents and medical reports neatly arranged before me like a carefully constructed defense. We need to discuss the medical treatment fund, I began, my voice calm and measured. Maya's husband, Mark, looked increasingly pale. He knew more than anyone about the potential legal ramifications of their actions. I've compiled extensive documentation. I continued sliding copies of bank statements, trust documents, and medical impact reports across the table. Each reveals not just the breach of trust, but the potential criminal implications of your actions. Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer, sat quietly beside me. His presence alone spoke volumes. Maya's mother attempted to interrupt. We were just trying to help. Help? I interrupted. By stealing funds specifically designated for my critical medical treatment. The room fell silent. Dr. Rodriguez's medical impact statement was particularly damning. It outlined in clinical, undeniable terms the potential health consequences of interrupting my specialized treatment. Each paragraph was a calculated blow to their fabricated narrative. Mark leaned towards Maya, whispering urgently. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the realization dawning that they had monumentally miscalculated. The Foundation has also been notified, I added. They're prepared to provide testimony about the critical nature of continuous treatment. Maya's confident facade began to crumble. Her fingers played nervously with her wedding ring, a telltale sign of her growing anxiety. Mr. Harrison spoke next, his voice professional and measured. The legal implications are significant. Unauthorized use of a designated medical trust can be considered financial fraud. The potential charges include theft, misappropriation of funds, and potential elder financial abuse. The color drained from Maya's face. We thought you wouldn't notice, she stammered. That's precisely the problem, I responded. You underestimated me. Again. The next hour was a systematic deconstruction of their actions. Bank transfers, communication logs, everything meticulously documented. Each piece of evidence removing any possibility of them claiming ignorance. Mark's financial struggles became clearer. Their desperate attempt to solve their monetary issues by stealing my medical fund was now exposed in stark, uncomfortable detail. We'll return the funds, Mark finally said, his voice defeated. That's not enough, I replied. The damage isn't just financial. It's the breach of trust, the potential risk to my health. Mr. Harrison outlined the potential settlement. It wasn't just about returning money. It was about accountability. Supervised financial oversight for Maya and her mother. Mandatory family counseling. A formal written apology, and most importantly, a legal document preventing any future unauthorized access to family trusts. As the meeting concluded, the weight of their actions hung heavy in the room. Michael squeezed my hand. No words were needed. We both understood the significance of this moment. This wasn't just about winning. It was about setting boundaries, about showing that my medical condition didn't make me weak, it made me stronger, more prepared. Later that evening, as we sat in our living room, Michael looked at me with a mixture of pride and admiration. You handled that perfectly, he said. I smiled, thinking about the journey, the years of preparation, the careful documentation, the resilience. Maya had thought she could easily dismiss me, steal from me. Instead, she'd learned a valuable lesson about underestimating someone fighting for their life. My medical treatment would continue, uninterrupted, my trust fund restored. And I was stronger than ever. The game was over, and I had won. My name is Elena Martinez, and family has always been complicated. At 32, I thought I had seen it all, until the day I discovered what my sister-in-law, Victoria, had done to my inheritance. It started with a casual phone call from my brother Michael's wife, her voice dripping with a mixture of excitement and mockery. Oh, Elena, she said, barely containing her laughter. I hope you don't mind, but that trust fund your parents left. Consider it taken care of. I was standing in my modest apartment in Chicago, fresh from a long shift at the hospital where I worked as a pediatric nurse. The evening sunlight cast long shadows across the room, creating an eerily perfect backdrop for the moment my world would change. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Victoria's laugh was sharp, cutting through the phone like a knife. "Those funds your parents set aside? Spent. Every single penny. Michael and I needed a new house, some investments. You weren't using it anyway. The trust fund wasn't just money. It was my parents' final gift, carefully preserved for my future. Mom and Dad had worked themselves to the bone. My father a construction worker, my mother a school cafeteria cook, to ensure their children would have opportunities they never had. I remembered the day they told me about the trust fund. It was just months before the car accident that took them both. "This is for your dreams," my mother had said, her weathered hands holding mine. "Whether it's finishing your nursing degree, buying a home, or starting a family, this is your safety net." Victoria knew all of this. She knew exactly what that money meant to me. "You can't just spend someone else's inheritance," I said, my voice remarkably calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "Watch me," she replied. "Michael agrees. It's family money after all, and we needed it more than you." More than me. I was the one working double shifts, paying off student loans, living in a small one-bedroom apartment. Michael and Victoria lived in a sprawling suburban home, drove luxury cars, and took vacations twice a year. The conversation ended with Victoria's final jab. "Don't make this a big deal. Family supports each other." Support. The word felt like a cruel joke. I spent that night gathering every piece of documentation I could find. Bank statements, emails, text messages, anything that might prove what Victoria had done. My fingers moved mechanically, fueled by a mixture of anger and determination. My best friend, Sophia, found me at 3 a.m. surrounded by papers. "Elena," she said, placing a cup of coffee beside me, "what are you going to do?" I looked up, my eyes clear and focused. "I'm going to get everything back." The next morning, I contacted Mr. Rodriguez, the family lawyer my parents had trusted for years. He was old school, the kind of attorney who remembered every client's story, who treated legal work like a sacred profession. "Elena," he said after listening to my story, "this is serious financial fraud. Victoria forged signatures, transferred funds without authorization. This isn't just a family dispute. This is a criminal matter." But pursuing legal action would mean destroying my relationship with Michael. We'd always been close, despite our differences. He was the golden child. Athletic, charismatic, everything coming easily to him. I was the responsible one, the caretaker, the one who always put family first. Would he believe me over his wife? Mr. Rodriguez must have sensed my hesitation. "Sometimes," he said gently, "protecting yourself is more important than protecting a relationship built on false foundations." I thought about my parents, about their dreams for me, about the trust fund they carefully preserved, believing it would give me opportunities they never had. "What are my options?" I asked. Little did I know, the path I was about to choose would change everything. Victoria thought she had won. She thought the money was hers to spend, to waste, to use as she saw fit. She was about to learn a very different lesson. The first step was documentation. Every single transaction, every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer would become evidence. And I was going to make absolutely certain that Victoria understood the true meaning of consequences. My hands might have been shaking when I started making calls, but my resolve was solid as steel. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect, about justice, about honoring my parents' final gift to me. Victoria's laughter would soon turn to silence, and I would be the one to make that happen. The next few weeks became a meticulously planned operation. Mr. Rodriguez wasn't just a lawyer. He was a strategic mastermind who understood that revenge is best served cold, calculated, and legally bulletproof. "We need evidence," he explained during our third meeting. "Not just accusations, but ironclad proof that Victoria deliberately misappropriated your trust fund." I gathered every document possible, bank statements showing unauthorized transfers, text messages where Victoria brazenly admitted to spending the money, emails discussing how she and Michael planned to use the funds for their family needs. Each piece of paper felt like a weapon, carefully positioned to dismantle Victoria's carefully constructed facade. My brother Michael remained blissfully unaware. Our monthly family dinners continued with Victoria's smug smile and Michael's oblivious chatter about their latest home renovation. I played my part perfectly, calm, collected, showing no hint of the storm brewing beneath the surface. "How's work?" Michael would ask. "Fine," I'd respond, watching Victoria shift uncomfortably, sensing something had changed. The first blow came unexpectedly. Mr. Rodriguez discovered that Victoria had not just spent the trust fund, but had actually committed multiple counts of financial fraud. She'd forged signatures, created fake documentation, and transferred funds through a complex network of accounts. "This goes beyond simple theft," he told me, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. "This is a sophisticated financial crime." I learned that Victoria had a history of financial manipulations. Previous employers had complaints about her accounting practices. There were whispers of discrepancies in her previous jobs, always smoothed over, always hidden. But not this time. Mr. Rodriguez contacted the bank, presenting them with our carefully compiled evidence. They were obligated to investigate. Forensic accountants were brought in, tracing every single transaction. Each revelation was like watching a carefully constructed house of cards begin to collapse. The first official warning came through an official bank investigation notice. Victoria's face went pale when the first letter arrived. I watched her hands shake as she opened the envelope, her confident demeanor crumbling. "What is this?" she demanded during a family dinner, her voice a mix of panic and anger. I met her gaze. Cool. Calm. "Perhaps you should read it carefully." Michael looked confused. "What's going on?" Victoria's attempts to deflect became increasingly desperate. She tried to paint me as the villain, claiming I was trying to destroy their family. "She's jealous," she told Michael. "Jealous of our success, of our life." But the evidence spoke louder than her accusations. Mr. Rodriguez was 3 steps ahead. He filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office. The investigation wasn't just about recovering the money, it was about holding Victoria accountable for her actions. "Financial fraud is a serious crime," he explained, "and your sister-in-law has left a trail that cannot be ignored." The next phase was strategic. We didn't just want the money back, we wanted Victoria to understand the true cost of her betrayal. Local authorities became involved. Victoria's workplace began an internal investigation into her financial practices. Her professional reputation, something she had carefully cultivated, started to crumble. Friends began distancing themselves. Whispers spread through their social circle. The perfect suburban couple was showing cracks. Michael started asking questions, not accusatory, but confused. "Why are the bank and police asking about our finances?" he would ask Victoria. Her responses became more frantic, more defensive. I continued to play my part perfectly. Calm, collected, waiting. During a family gathering, I watched Victoria's carefully constructed world begin to unravel. Her confidence was replaced by a growing sense of panic. She knew something was coming, but she couldn't anticipate what. "Is everything okay?" I asked her innocently, knowing full well it was not. Her smile was more of a grimace. "Everything's fine," she responded, but her eyes told a different story. Mr. Rodriguez kept me informed of every development. The bank had frozen their accounts pending investigation. The district attorney was building a case. Victoria's attempts to move or hide money were being carefully documented. "We're not just seeking justice," he told me. "We're ensuring she understands the full consequences of her actions." My parents had always taught me about integrity, about working hard, about respecting what belongs to others. Victoria had violated every single one of those principles. And now she would learn that actions have consequences. The final piece was about to fall into place. Victoria thought she had gotten away with her theft. She thought a simple laugh and a dismissive attitude would protect her. She was wrong. Very wrong. As I sat in my apartment, looking at the documents that would soon change everything, I felt a sense of calm. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, about honoring my parents' memory, about protecting what was rightfully mine. Victoria's laughter would soon stop, and the authorities were about to dial. The game was just beginning. The final act of our carefully orchestrated plan unfolded on a crisp autumn morning. Victoria had no idea that her world was about to completely implode. The first domino fell when the district attorney's office officially filed charges: financial fraud, identity theft, and multiple counts of unauthorized fund transfer. The documents were comprehensive, leaving no room for interpretation or escape. Michael was the first to truly understand the depth of Victoria's betrayal. During a tense family meeting, Mr. Rodriguez laid out every single piece of evidence: the forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers, the systematic theft of my inheritance. "How could you?" Michael asked Victoria, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. "We're family." Victoria's perfectly crafted persona crumbled. The confident, manipulative woman I knew dissolved into a desperate, cornered individual. Her attempts to explain, to justify, became increasingly frantic. "It was just money," she stammered. "I thought you didn't need it." But it was never just about the money. It was about respect, about honoring my parents' final gift, about maintaining the integrity of family. The legal consequences were swift and severe. Victoria lost her job when her employer conducted an internal investigation. Her professional network, carefully built over years, began to disintegrate. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. The financial impact was devastating. Their luxury home went on the market. Michael, caught between shock and anger, began to see his wife for who she truly was. "I've been covering for her for years," he confessed to me during a quiet moment. "I just never saw it." Mr. Rodriguez ensured that every penny was traced. The trust fund wasn't just about money, it was about my parents' legacy, their final gift to me. Each dollar would be recovered, with interest. The bank's investigation revealed a pattern of financial manipulation that went beyond just my trust fund. Victoria had a history of similar actions, carefully hidden until now. The authorities were building a case that would have long-lasting consequences. During the legal proceedings, I remained calm. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about accountability. My mother's words echoed in my mind. "Integrity matters more than anything," she'd always said. I was proving her right. The turning point came during a family court hearing. Victoria, once so confident, now looked small and defeated. Her attempts to manipulate the situation fell apart under the weight of documented evidence. "I just wanted to help our family," she claimed. But help wasn't theft. Help wasn't betrayal. Michael stood by my side during the proceedings. The brother I'd loved my entire life was seeing the truth. Not through anger, but through clarity. "I'm sorry," he told me after one particularly difficult hearing. "I should have seen this years ago." The financial recovery was just the beginning. My trust fund was fully restored, with additional compensation for the unauthorized use. But the real victory was deeper. It was about reclaiming my power, about showing that family isn't about blind loyalty, but about respect and integrity. Victoria's world continued to unravel. Criminal charges meant she would struggle to find employment. Her professional reputation was destroyed. The social circle she carefully cultivated began to distance themselves. Mr. Rodriguez was more than just a lawyer. He became a guardian of justice, ensuring that every legal avenue was explored. "Your parents would be proud," he told me during our final meeting. The money was important, but the restoration of my family's dignity was priceless. Michael and I began to rebuild our relationship, not as it was before, but as something more honest, more real. He understood now the true meaning of family. "I misjudged you," he admitted. "I always thought you were the quiet one, but you're the strongest of us all." As the legal proceedings concluded, I felt a sense of peace. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about standing up for what was right. My parents had always believed in me. They had saved this trust fund as a testament to their love, their hope for my future. Victoria had tried to steal that hope. She failed. Standing in my now paid-off apartment, looking at the restored trust fund, I realized something profound. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect, about integrity, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Victoria thought she could laugh away my inheritance. Her laughter had long since stopped. And the authorities, they had dialed. Justice, it seemed, was a dish best served with patience, precision, and unwavering integrity. The phone call came at 2:37, jolting me awake from a restless sleep. My hand trembled as I reached for the device, already knowing something was wrong. The caller ID showed my brother's name, and in that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. "Sarah," his voice cracked, "you need to come home. Now." My name is Elena Martinez, and I had spent the last decade building a life far away from the toxic family dynamics that had defined my childhood. A successful environmental lawyer in Seattle, I had carefully constructed boundaries that kept me at a safe distance from the chaos that always seemed to swirl around my family. But something in my brother Michael's voice was different. Urgent, scared. By the time I arrived at my parents' house the next afternoon, the tension was suffocating. My mother sat rigidly on the living room couch, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. My father stood by the window, his back turned to everyone. And there, looking almost defiant, was my sister-in-law, Vanessa. "I don't know what you're all so worked up about," she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. Michael pulled me aside, his voice a harsh whisper. "It's about Grandma Elena's trust fund, the one she left specifically for you. Our grandmother had been more than just a relative. She was the glue that had held our family together, the one person who truly understood the complexities of our lives. When she passed away 5 years ago, she had left a substantial trust fund specifically for me, $500,000 earmarked for my education and future." Vanessa accessed the account, Michael continued. "She somehow transferred the entire amount." I felt the blood drain from my face. Our grandmother's final gift, her ultimate expression of love and belief in my potential, was gone. Vanessa noticed my shock and couldn't help herself. She laughed, a cold, calculated sound that sent chills down my spine. "It was just sitting there," she said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. "Michael and I have expenses, a new house, car payments. It's not like you were using the money." The audacity took my breath away. I had deliberately left the trust fund untouched, respecting my grandmother's wishes. I was building my career, paying off my law school loans systematically, believing in the value of hard work over immediate gratification. My parents seemed paralyzed. My father, always conflict-averse, looked everywhere but at Vanessa. My mother's eyes were filled with a mixture of shame and fear. "How?" I managed to ask, my legal training already clicking into investigative mode. Vanessa shrugged. "I'm Michael's wife. I had access to some of his financial documents. The bank didn't ask too many questions. What she didn't know was that I had been preparing for potential family betrayals my entire life. My grandmother had taught me to always have a backup plan, to document everything, to be 3 steps ahead." The day I returned to Seattle, I made 3 critical phone calls. The first was to Mr. Harrison, the family's longtime attorney who had helped draft my grandmother's will. "Elena," he said after I explained the situation, "I suspected something might be happening. I've been tracking some unusual communications about the trust fund." The second call was to the bank's fraud department. The third was to a private investigator I had worked with on previous cases. While Vanessa celebrated her ill-gotten gains, believing she had successfully stolen my inheritance, I was meticulously building a case that would not just recover the money, but expose her complete betrayal. My grandmother hadn't just left me money. She had left me a legacy of resilience, of strategic thinking, of never allowing myself to be a victim. "This isn't over," I whispered to myself, looking out over the Seattle skyline. Not by a long shot. Little did Vanessa know, every document she had forged, every communication she had made, was about to become evidence in what would become the most significant legal battle our family had ever seen. The trust fund wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about honoring my grandmother's memory, about proving that integrity matters more than short-term gains. And I was just getting started. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? I can develop the narrative further, focusing on Elena's strategic approach to uncovering and confronting Vanessa's betrayal. The next morning, I arrived at my law office earlier than usual. My colleague Marcus knew something was different the moment I walked in. The determined set of my jaw, the carefully organized file folder in my hand, everything screamed that I was preparing for battle. "Walk me through everything," Marcus said, closing the door to my office. I spread out the documents I had collected: bank statements, email communications, forged signatures. Each piece told a story of calculated deception. Mr. Harrison had been right. There were inconsistencies in the trust fund transfer that went beyond a simple family dispute. Vanessa hadn't just transferred the money. She had carefully manipulated multiple financial documents to cover her tracks. She forged my signature, I explained to Marcus, but she didn't know that my grandmother always insisted on additional verification for any significant transactions. The private investigator I'd hired had already uncovered a pattern. This wasn't the first time Vanessa had attempted financial manipulation. There were hints of similar incidents in her past, small transactions, carefully hidden transfers that had gone unnoticed. By noon, I had a comprehensive file prepared, each piece of evidence meticulously documented, cross-referenced, and verified. My legal training wasn't just a profession, it was a weapon. My phone rang. It was the bank's fraud department. Ms. Martinez, the investigator said, "We've completed our initial review. There are significant irregularities in the trust fund transfer." The pieces were falling into place. Vanessa had made a critical mistake. In her rush to steal the money, she had left a digital trail that would be her undoing. That evening, I called my brother Michael. The conversation was not going to be easy. "I know what Vanessa did," I started, my voice calm but firm. Michael's response was defensive. "It's not what you think. We needed the money. Times are tough." "Needed the money," I repeated. "By stealing from me? From Grandma's legacy?" I could hear the conflict in his voice. Michael had always been weak-willed, easily manipulated by those closest to him. Vanessa had perfected the art of making him feel both guilty and heroic in the same breath. "I have evidence," I continued. "Enough to not just recover the money, but to potentially press criminal charges." The silence that followed was deafening. The next week was a blur of legal preparations. I filed formal complaints with the bank, initiated a forensic audit, and began preparing the groundwork for a potential lawsuit. Vanessa's confidence began to crack. I could see it in the increasingly desperate text messages, the hushed phone calls, the way she avoided direct confrontation. My mother called, her voice trembling. "Elena, please. Can't we handle this as a family?" This stopped being a family matter when Vanessa stole my inheritance, I replied coldly. The breaking point came unexpectedly. A package arrived at my office, sent by Vanessa. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "I can explain everything," the note read. Marcus looked at me skeptically. It could be a trap. But something told me this was different. This was Vanessa's attempt to control the narrative before everything fell apart. The USB drive contained a series of encrypted files. It took our forensic team nearly 2 days to crack the encryption. What we found was more shocking than the theft itself. Vanessa had been gambling, not just small amounts, but significant sums that had been slowly draining their family's finances. The trust fund wasn't just a spontaneous theft. It was a desperate attempt to cover up years of financial mismanagement. "She's been living a lie," I told Marcus, spreading out the newly discovered documents, creating an illusion of financial stability while secretly drowning in debt. The final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place, and Vanessa had no idea what was coming. My phone rang. It was the bank's senior investigator. "Ms. Martinez," he said, "we're ready to proceed with a formal investigation. Everything you've provided confirms our suspicions." I looked out my office window, watching the Seattle rain create intricate patterns on the glass. This wasn't just about recovering money anymore. This was about exposing a truth that had been hidden for far too long. Vanessa thought she had won. She thought a quick transfer and a few forged documents would be enough to steal my inheritance. She was wrong. Dead wrong. Would you like me to continue with the final part of the story where the full extent of Vanessa's betrayal is revealed and Elena takes her final strategic action? The courtroom was silent, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Vanessa sat rigid, her perfectly composed exterior beginning to crack under the weight of the evidence. Mr. Harrison presented the documentation with surgical precision. Bank records, forensic analysis, digital footprints, each piece of evidence a devastating blow to Vanessa's fabricated story. Not only did my client's sister-in-law illegally transfer $500,000 from a protected trust fund, Mr. Harrison stated, but she has systematically engaged in financial fraud spanning multiple years. The turning point came when the bank's lead investigator testified. Digital forensics revealed a complex web of financial deception. Vanessa hadn't just stolen my trust fund. She had been running an elaborate scheme of financial manipulation for years. My brother Michael sat with his head in his hands, the weight of his wife's betrayal crushing him. Vanessa's lawyer attempted to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge's expression made it clear this was beyond a simple family dispute. "Ms. Reyes," the judge said, addressing Vanessa directly, "you are facing multiple charges of financial fraud, forgery, and theft." When the verdict came, it was decisive. Complete restitution of the stolen funds, additional financial penalties, and potential criminal charges. The trust fund would be fully restored with interest. But this was about more than money. After the hearing, my mother approached me, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Elena. We should have seen what was happening." I understood then that this wasn't just about Vanessa's betrayal. It was about breaking a cycle of family silence, of allowing destructive behavior to continue unchecked. "This stops now," I told her quietly. The aftermath was seismic. Michael filed for divorce. Vanessa's professional reputation was destroyed. The family dynamics that had allowed such manipulation were finally exposed to harsh light. My grandmother's legacy wasn't just the money. It was the strength to stand up, to fight back, to protect what was rightfully mine. Months later, I sat in my office, looking at the restored trust fund statement. Mr. Harrison had ensured every cent was returned, with significant interest. "What will you do with it?" Marcus asked. I smiled, remembering my grandmother's words. "I'll use it exactly as she intended, to build something meaningful." Part of the fund would go to establishing a scholarship for students facing financial challenges. Another portion would support legal aid for victims of financial fraud. My grandmother had always believed in turning pain into purpose. Michael reached out, seeking reconciliation. It would take time, but our relationship could heal. "I'm proud of you," he said during our first conversation after everything. Grandma would be proud too. The trust fund sat in a secure account, no longer just money, but a symbol of resilience, of fighting back, of maintaining integrity when it would have been easier to give up. Vanessa's final attempt to contact me came through a mutual acquaintance, a desperate plea for understanding. I declined to respond. Some betrayals are beyond explanation. As the Seattle sunset painted my office in warm hues, I thought about my grandmother. She had prepared me for this moment my entire life, not just with financial security, but with the courage to stand up for myself. The legacy wasn't just about the money. It was about never becoming a victim, about turning pain into power, about proving that integrity always wins. The first notification came at 2:17 a.m., a sharp ping that sliced through the silence of my bedroom. My phone screen blazed with an incoming message from an unknown number. But something in my gut told me this was different. Different and dangerous. I'm Olivia Martinez, 32 years old, a child psychologist with a thriving private practice in Seattle. My life had always been about precision, about understanding the complex layers of human emotion. But nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that was about to unfold. The message was brief, almost casual in its cruelty. "Check your email. Everyone will know who you really are by morning." My hands trembled as I opened my laptop, the blue light casting an eerie glow across my bedroom. When the email loaded, my world tilted on its axis. There, spread across multiple attachments, were private photographs I had taken years ago during a vulnerable time in my life. Intimate, personal images that were never meant to be seen by anyone. And they were about to be leaked everywhere. The sender was crystal clear. Victoria Stevens, my sister-in-law. The woman who had despised me from the moment my brother Michael married me 5 years ago. Victoria had always been beautiful in that calculating way. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in corporate marketing, always networking, always positioning herself for the next big opportunity. And she had always made it clear that she thought I was beneath her brother's league. My phone started buzzing. Text messages from colleagues, friends, notification after notification flooding my screen. The images were spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. I took a deep breath. Panicking wouldn't help. Years of psychological training had taught me that emotional regulation was key in crisis moments. I needed a plan. My first call was to Michael. Despite our complicated relationship with Victoria, he was still my brother-in-law, and I needed an ally. "Liv?" His voice was groggy. "What's wrong?" "Victoria leaked private photos of me online," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And I need your help to understand why." There was a moment of stunned silence. "She did what?" I explained the situation, detailing the emails, the images, the rapid spread across social media. Michael's initial shock transformed into protective anger. "I'll kill her," he muttered. "This is unacceptable." But I knew Michael. His anger would be temporary. Victoria had always been his golden child sister, the one he protected and defended, no matter what. I need more than anger, I told him. I need evidence, because this isn't just about revenge. This is about protecting my reputation, my career, my entire life. By sunrise, my world had fundamentally changed. My practice's waiting room, usually filled with worried parents and children, was now a ghost town. Cancellation messages flooded my professional email. Colleagues were radio silent, uncertain how to engage with the scandal. But I wasn't going to be a victim. Not this time. I started methodically documenting everything. Screenshot after screenshot of the image distribution, tracking its origin, collecting digital footprints. My background in psychology had taught me about human behavior, but my growing up with a lawyer father had taught me about meticulous evidence collection. Victoria thought she knew me. She thought she could destroy me with a few leaked photographs from my past. What she didn't realize was that I had been collecting my own file on her for years. Small inconsistencies, suspicious financial transactions, hints of professional misconduct that I had carefully, quietly documented. This wasn't just going to be a fight. This was going to be a systematic dismantling of everything she thought was untouchable. By noon, I had a war room set up in my home office. Multiple screens, forensic digital tools, and a growing file that would become Victoria's worst nightmare. My phone rang. An unknown number. Enjoy the show. Victoria's voice was dripping with smug satisfaction. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response. Not feeling chatty, she pressed. Thought you'd be begging me to stop. Are you finished? I asked quietly. Her laugh was sharp. Just getting started. Little did she know, so was I. The first phase of my counterattack was about to begin. Victoria had declared war, thinking she held all the cards. She was about to learn that some opponents are most dangerous when they're backed into a corner. And I was far from cornered. I was just getting started. The next 48 hours became a strategic chess match of information and preparation. Victoria thought she had delivered a knockout blow, but I was about to show her the true meaning of calculated revenge. My first move was to contact Daniel Rodriguez, a digital forensics expert I'd worked with on a previous legal case involving online harassment. We'd met during a professional workshop on child protection, and his expertise in tracking digital footprints was legendary in legal circles. This isn't just a simple photo leak, I explained during our emergency video call. This is a targeted attack designed to destroy my professional reputation. Daniel's fingers flew across his keyboard. Give me access to your devices and full permission to investigate. By evening, he had begun tracing the origin of the leaked photos. What Victoria didn't know was that these weren't just random images. They were carefully time-stamped, geotagged digital artifacts that would tell a more complex story. Meanwhile, I reached out to my network of professional contacts. Dr. Elena Martinez, the head of the child psychology department at the local university and my mentor, was the first to offer support. Take a breath, Olivia, she advised. Your reputation isn't built on a few leaked photographs. It's built on years of dedicated work and professional integrity. Her words were a lifeline. I knew the psychological warfare Victoria was waging, designed to isolate me, to make me feel ashamed, to destroy my confidence. But shame was a luxury I couldn't afford. My brother-in-law, Michael, was less strategic. I'm going to confront her, he insisted during a heated phone call. This is unacceptable. No, I stopped him firmly. That's exactly what she wants. An emotional reaction that makes me look unstable. By midnight, Daniel had uncovered something intriguing. The photo leak wasn't just a random act of malice. There was a sophisticated digital trail suggesting professional-level manipulation. Someone helped her, Daniel explained. These aren't just uploaded photos. There's evidence of sophisticated routing, IP masking, and coordinated distribution. The plot was thickening. My investigation into Victoria's recent activities revealed a pattern. She had been struggling professionally. Her last 2 marketing contracts had been terminated. Rumors of unethical behavior were circulating in her professional network. And now, suddenly, she had launched this calculated attack on me. I began connecting the dots. Victoria had always been threatened by my success. While I built a respected psychology practice working with vulnerable children, she saw herself as the family's professional success story. My work was meaningful. Hers was about climbing corporate ladders. By day 3, the digital forensics revealed something shocking. The photos had been digitally manipulated, subtle alterations that made them appear more compromising than they originally were. She spent money on this, Daniel confirmed. Professional level editing. This wasn't a quick revenge plot. This was a planned attack. My next move would require precision. I gathered documentation, every recommendation letter, every professional achievement, every piece of evidence that demonstrated my character and professional integrity. A meeting was arranged with the state's psychological licensing board. Not as a plea, but as a proactive defense. I would control the narrative before Victoria could twist it further. These are fabricated images, I told the board representatives, presenting Daniel's forensic report, deliberately altered to cause maximum psychological damage. What Victoria didn't know was that I had been quietly collecting information about her own professional misconduct, small ethical breaches, questionable client interactions, financial irregularities in her marketing contracts. My weapon wouldn't be emotional outrage, it would be methodical, documented truth. By the end of the week, the tide was shifting. The initial shock of the photo leak was giving way to questions. Why would someone go to such lengths to destroy a respected child psychologist's reputation? My phone rang. An unknown number. Enjoying your little investigation? Victoria's voice was less confident now. Not an investigation, I replied calmly. A reckoning. The pieces were almost in place. Victoria had declared war, thinking she could destroy me with a few manipulated photographs. She was about to learn that attacking me was the biggest mistake of her life. The final act was about to begin. The final confrontation was going to be strategic, calculated, and devastating. I chose the location carefully, a neutral conference room at a downtown Seattle law firm. My digital forensics expert Daniel, my mentor Dr. Elena, and my brother Michael would be present as witnesses. Victoria would walk into a trap of her own making, completely unaware of the evidence we had meticulously gathered. The invitation was simple. A formal request for a mediation meeting regarding the recent photo leak, carefully worded to pique her curiosity and sense of professional pride. When Victoria walked into the conference room, her perfectly tailored navy suit and designer heels screamed confidence. But I could see the micro-expressions of doubt flickering beneath her carefully constructed facade. I assume this is about settling the little misunderstanding, she said, sitting down with a condescending smile. Daniel placed a folder on the table. Inside were comprehensive digital forensics reports, bank statements, and communications that would unravel her entire scheme. This isn't about settling, I said quietly. This is about exposure. The first blow came swiftly. Daniel presented evidence of how the photos were professionally manipulated, tracing the digital fingerprints to a private editing service Victoria had paid for specifically to create these images. These aren't just leaked photos, Daniel explained. These are carefully constructed digital weapons. Michael, who had always been protective of Victoria, looked stunned. The perfect family narrative was crumbling in real time. But we were just getting started. The next layer of evidence revealed Victoria's professional desperation. Her marketing firm was on the brink of collapse. She had been losing clients, facing potential legal action for unethical practices, and was drowning in mounting financial pressures. You needed a distraction, I said, sliding bank statements across the table. Something to draw attention away from your own professional failures. Her confident facade began to crack. Dr. Elena detailed the psychological impact of such targeted harassment. This wasn't just a personal attack, she explained. This was a calculated attempt to destroy a professional reputation, potentially causing long-term psychological trauma. The final piece of evidence was the most devastating. We had uncovered a series of communications showing Victoria had been planning this attack for months. Client complaints, financial investigations, and a trail of digital breadcrumbs that painted a damning picture of her true character. You thought destroying my reputation would save yours, I said softly, but you've only accelerated your own downfall. Victoria's composure shattered. Tears, anger, desperate pleas, she cycled through every emotion, trying to find a way out. But there was no escape. The legal implications were clear. Criminal harassment charges, potential civil lawsuits, and professional sanctions were now inevitable. Her marketing career was effectively over. Michael, torn between family loyalty and the truth, looked defeated. Why? He asked his sister. Why would you do this? The truth came pouring out. Years of feeling overshadowed, of believing she was always second best, of watching me build a meaningful career while she struggled with superficial success. "You always looked so perfect," Victoria whispered. "Always the good one. The one everyone respected. But perfection wasn't the goal. Impact was." The meeting concluded with a clear message. Victoria would face legal consequences. She would issue a public apology. And she would never again attempt to harm my professional reputation. In the weeks that followed, my practice not only recovered but grew stronger. The transparency of how I handled the situation became a testament to my professional integrity. Clients who had initially pulled back now came forward with increased support. My licensing board not only cleared me but commended my handling of the situation. Victoria's world, meanwhile, collapsed. Her marketing firm shut down. Her professional networks disintegrated. The very weapon she had designed to destroy me became the instrument of her own destruction. Michael and I found a difficult reconciliation. He apologized, not just for Victoria's actions, but for years of turning a blind eye to her manipulative behavior. "I should have seen it sooner," he admitted during a quiet dinner. Dr. Elena's words echoed in my mind. "Some attacks are designed to break you, but when you understand the psychology behind them, you can turn them into opportunities for growth." 6 months later, I stood in my newly expanded practice. Additional counseling rooms, a support group space for children dealing with trauma, and a renewed sense of purpose. Victoria's attempt to destroy me had ultimately helped me build something stronger. The final message was clear: you can try to tear someone down, but true integrity cannot be destroyed by manipulation. It can only be strengthened. The text message arrived just as I was pulling into the parking lot of my office. From my sister-in-law, Elena, of course. "Look at my new designer handbag." She sent a selfie, her perfectly manicured hand holding an expensive leather bag. "Bought with your family money. Haha. Thanks for being so careless." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The casual cruelty, the brazen theft, it was too much. "My name is Sophie Martinez, 35 years old. A project manager at a tech startup in San Francisco. And for the past 6 months, my sister-in-law had been systematically draining a trust fund that wasn't hers to touch. The trust fund had been my grandmother's final gift. Elena's husband, my brother Marco, had no idea what was happening. And that was exactly how Elena wanted it. I remember the day my grandmother passed away. Elena had been hovering near the lawyer's office, asking endless questions about inheritance. My grandmother Maria, a first-generation immigrant who had built a successful cleaning business from nothing, had always been strategic. The trust fund wasn't just money, it was a legacy. "This is for your education, for your dreams," she told me years ago. "Never let anyone take away what you've worked for." Those words echoed in my mind as I stared at Elena's message. $450,000 gone. Spent on designer bags, luxury vacations, expensive jewelry. All while claiming it was her money to spend. The first hint of trouble came 6 months ago. A strange withdrawal from the trust account. Then another. Small amounts at first, carefully calculated to avoid immediate detection. But Elena wasn't careful enough. I'd inherited my grandmother's sharp mind. Working in tech had taught me about data, about tracking, about finding patterns. And I knew something was wrong. Mr. Rodriguez, my grandmother's longtime lawyer, had been the first to raise a red flag. "Someone's been accessing the account," he told me during our confidential meeting. "But the signatures don't quite match." Elena had forged documents, carefully, meticulously, but not perfectly. My brother Marco was oblivious. A construction worker who trusted his wife completely. He had no idea about the intricate financial details. Elena managed their finances, and she made sure he saw only what she wanted him to see. "We're saving money," she'd tell him. "Don't worry about the details." But I worried. I investigated. Bank statements, digital trails, every piece of financial documentation became a puzzle I was determined to solve. Elena thought she was smart. She thought no one would notice. She'd been slowly transferring funds, creating fake invoices, manipulating account statements. But what she didn't know was that my grandmother had built in multiple layers of protection. Hidden clauses, specific conditions, and most importantly, original notarized documents that could never be truly erased. I spent weeks gathering evidence. Silent, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment. Each designer bag Elena posted, each luxury vacation she bragged about, they were pieces of evidence. Timestamps of her theft. Digital breadcrumbs leading directly to her crime. My tech background wasn't just a job. It was a weapon, and I was about to use it. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Alina, my grandmother's sister, who lived in a small town in Arizona. "I have something for you," she'd said during our monthly call. "Something Grandma Maria wanted you to have. But only when the time was right." A small weathered envelope arrived a week later. Inside, original trust fund documents, signed, notarized, with specific instructions that could blow Elena's scheme wide open. My grandmother, always 3 steps ahead, had anticipated something like this might happen. The documents revealed everything: specific conditions about the trust fund, restrictions Elena had completely overlooked in her rush to steal the money. I knew what I had to do, but timing would be everything. I screenshot Elena's messages, compiled the bank statements, gathered every piece of digital evidence. Mr. Rodriguez confirmed what I already suspected. Elena's actions weren't just unethical, they were potentially criminal. "We have multiple legal avenues," he told me, "but we need to be strategic." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Elena. "Can't wait to show Marco my new vacation photos. Bet you're jealous." I allowed myself a small smile. Elena had no idea what was coming. The generational wealth she believed was hers was about to become her worst nightmare. And I was going to make sure she understood one fundamental truth. You don't mess with a legacy built by a strong immigrant grandmother who fought for every single penny. This wasn't just about money. This was about respect, about honor, about protecting the dreams my grandmother had worked her entire life to secure. Elena thought she had won. She thought she had gotten away with her theft. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The family dinner was planned weeks in advance. Marco's birthday. Elena would be there, dripping in her stolen luxury, believing herself untouchable. I arrived early, a manila folder tucked discreetly in my leather portfolio. My parents noticed immediately. Something was different about me. Calm. Calculated. "You seem intense," my mother whispered as I helped her set the table. "Just wait," I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Elena strutted in an hour later, a new Gucci handbag swinging from her arm. Her laugh was too loud, her smile too bright. The performance of someone hiding something. "Sophia," she called out, deliberately loud. "Look at my new bag. Isn't it amazing?" Marco beamed, completely oblivious. My wife has such great taste. I watched, silent, waiting. Dinner progressed, small talk, laughter. Elena continued her performance, occasionally throwing me pointed looks. Challenging, mocking. "So Sophia," she said during dessert, "still working that tech job? Must be hard saving money in San Francisco." The table went quiet. A classic Elena move, always trying to belittle, always trying to create tension. "Actually," I responded, my voice calm, "I've been doing quite well." I pulled out the manila folder. "In fact, I'd like to discuss something important. About Grandma Maria's trust fund." Marco looked confused. My parents exchanged worried glances. Elena's smile froze. "Mr. Rodriguez, our family lawyer, asked me to share some information." I continued, spreading documents across the tablecloth. Bank statements, forensic financial reports, copies of forged signatures, digital transaction trails. Elena's face transformed. The confident smile disappeared, replaced by a look of pure panic. "What is this?" Marco asked, picking up a document. Before I could answer, Elena interjected. "It's nothing, just some boring paperwork." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. The documents revealed a meticulously planned theft. $450,000 systematically withdrawn. Fake invoices, forged signatures. Elena had been methodical in her approach. But she had overlooked one critical detail. My grandmother's original trust document contained a unique clause, a protection mechanism she had crafted decades ago, anticipating potential family conflicts. The trust fund, I explained, can only be accessed under specific conditions. Conditions Elena violated multiple times. Marco looked at his wife, confusion turning to suspicion. "Elena," he asked, What is she talking about? I watched her carefully, saw the moment she realized her elaborate lie was crumbling. It's not what it looks like, she stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. Mr. Rodriguez had prepared everything. Legal documentation showing each fraudulent transaction, forensic evidence tracing every stolen dollar. The luxury bags, the vacations, the jewelry, all purchased with stolen money. The bank has been notified, I said quietly. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit is involved. Marco's face went pale. Elena's confident facade completely shattered. You can't do this, she whispered. But I could, and I would. My grandmother hadn't just left me money. She'd left me a blueprint for justice. Each transaction is documented. I continued. Forged signatures, unauthorized transfers. This isn't just about the money. This is about breaking trust. Marco looked devastated. His perfect world, his perfect marriage was unraveling in front of his family. Elena tried one last manipulation, tears welling up. The victim performance she had perfected over years. It was just a mistake, she pleaded. I was going to pay it back. But the evidence told a different story. Months of calculated theft. Deliberate deception. My Aunt Elena, who had delivered the original documents, spoke up. Your grandmother always said, she told me, protect the legacy, but also give people a chance to make things right. I understood what she meant. You have two choices, I told Elena, my voice steady. Voluntary restitution and potential reduced legal consequences, or full prosecution. The table was silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavy. Marco looked at his wife, really looked at her, seeing her, perhaps, for the first time. Is this true? He asked softly. Elena's carefully constructed world began to crumble. No more designer bags. No more luxury vacations. No more stolen dreams. The generational wealth she believed was hers was about to become her greatest regret. And I was just getting started. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within days, Elena's carefully constructed world collapsed. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit began their investigation. Bank accounts frozen. Credit cards canceled. Her entire financial landscape transformed into a minefield of legal consequences. Marco moved out temporarily. Not a dramatic exit, but a quiet, devastated retreat. The betrayal cut deeper than the financial theft. It was a violation of trust that ran much deeper than money. How could you? He asked Elena during one of their first separation meetings. We built everything together. But they hadn't built anything together. Elena had been building the house of cards, and I had just blown it down. Mr. Rodriguez worked tirelessly. Legal documents flew back and forth. Elena's initial bravado crumbled under the weight of mounting evidence. Her lawyer advised cooperation. The alternative was far worse. 2 months after the family dinner, we sat in a mediation room. Elena looked nothing like the confident woman who had bragged about designer bags. Her designer clothes were replaced by muted, conservative attire. Her perfectly manicured nails were now bitten down, nervous. I want to make this right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But making things right wasn't as simple as she hoped. The trust fund wasn't just money. It was my grandmother's legacy. A lifetime of hard work, of immigrant struggles, of building something from nothing. Restitution, Mr. Rodriguez explained, isn't just about returning the money. The legal process revealed more than just financial theft. Elena had forged documents, created fake invoices, manipulated bank statements. Each action compounded her crime. Marco sat quietly during the mediation. His construction worker's hands that had built real things, honest things, now sat folded in his lap. The betrayal had broken something fundamental in him. My tech background proved crucial. Digital forensics traced every single transaction. Nothing was hidden. Nothing could be explained away. The first settlement offer came through. Full financial restitution. Plus legal penalties. Elena would be paying back far more than she had stolen. But money was only part of the punishment. Her professional reputation was destroyed. The accounting firm where she worked discovered her fraudulent activities. Termination was immediate. Professional licensing boards were notified. You'll never work in financial services again, her lawyer warned. The family dynamics shifted dramatically. My parents, initially shocked, now viewed Elena with a mixture of disappointment and anger. How could you betray our trust? My mother asked during a difficult conversation. Elena had no real answer. The trust fund, miraculously, remained mostly intact. The quick detection and legal intervention meant most of the money was recovered. What wasn't recovered would come from Elena's personal assets and future earnings. A year-long forensic audit revealed the full extent of her actions. It wasn't just the trust fund. She had been manipulating finances in other areas of her life. Small thefts, fraudulent claims, a pattern of deception that ran deep. Marco filed for divorce, not with anger, but with a profound sense of loss. "I thought I knew her," he told me during one of our rare conversations. "I was wrong about everything." The legal proceedings became a matter of public record. In our small community, Elena became a cautionary tale, the woman who tried to steal her own family's legacy. My grandmother would have been proud, not of the destruction, but of the justice. "Protect what's yours," she used to say, "but always give people a chance to make things right." I had done exactly that. The final settlement was more than financial. It was about restoring dignity, about showing that generational wealth isn't just about money. It's about trust, integrity, and respect. Elena was required to pay additional legal penalties, complete financial ethics courses, maintain a clean financial record for 10 years. Her professional life was essentially over. No financial institution would touch her. Her reputation was permanently damaged. Marco rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but with integrity. "I'm grateful you uncovered this," he told me during one of our last conversations. "Better to know the truth than live a lie." The trust fund, my grandmother's final gift, was restored. But it became more than just money. It became a symbol of family resilience. I established a scholarship in my grandmother's name, using part of the recovered funds to help first-generation immigrant students pursue their dreams. She would have loved this, my aunt told me, tears in her eyes. Elena's final attempt at reconciliation came through a carefully worded letter, an apology, a plea for understanding. I didn't respond. Some betrayals are too deep to simply forgive. The generational wealth she believed was hers had become her ultimate downfall. A lesson in the consequences of greed, of betrayal, of thinking you can outsmart family. My grandmother always said, "The truth will always find its way home." And she was right. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to mock my existence. I remember the day everything changed like it was yesterday, the day my world shattered into a million microscopic pieces, each fragment representing a dream, a hope, a future that suddenly seemed impossibly distant. My name is Elena Martinez, and at 19, I was supposed to be planning my future, not fighting for my survival. The genetic test results lay before me, a cruel piece of paper that declared my body a battlefield of mutations and uncertainties. Huntington's syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that would slowly, mercilessly rob me of everything. My movement, my memory, my very sense of self. "It's progressive," Dr. Rees had said, his voice clinical, detached. "The symptoms typically begin between ages 30 and 50. But in your case, the genetic markers suggest an earlier onset." I remembered how my hands had trembled, how the world seemed to tilt on its axis. My mother, once my greatest supporter, sat silent, her eyes avoiding mine. My father's jaw clenched, a telltale sign of the storm brewing beneath his stoic exterior. "We can't do this," my father said later that evening, the words cutting through the suffocating silence of our living room. "The medical bills, the care, the constant support, it's too much." My sister, Maria, stood by the window, her recent college graduation photos still displayed proudly on the mantel. She was the golden child, straight A's, a full scholarship, a future bright and unblemished. And then there was me, the genetic anomaly, the unexpected burden. "We can't just give up," I pleaded, my voice breaking. But even as the words left my mouth, I saw the decision in their eyes. 2 weeks later, I found myself packed and ready to leave. No dramatic goodbyes, no tearful embraces. Just a cold efficiency that spoke volumes about their decision. My Aunt Elena, the woman I was named after, was my only lifeline. "You'll stay with me," she said, her weathered hands squeezing mine. She was a retired nurse, tough as nails and with a heart larger than the world could comprehend. The first year was brutal. While my family celebrated Maria's achievements, her internship, her bright future, I was learning to navigate a body that was slowly becoming my enemy. Aunt Elena became my rock, my researcher, my fiercest advocate. They may have given up on you, she'd say, mixing herbal teas and researching experimental treatments, but I never will. We spent countless nights poring over medical journals, connecting with rare disease support groups, exploring every possible avenue. When traditional medicine offered little hope, we looked deeper. My aunt's connections in the medical world became my lifeline. "There's a research program," she told me one night, her eyes sparkling with a hope I'd almost forgotten existed. "They're looking for patients with unique genetic markers for an experimental treatment." The application process was grueling. Genetic testing, psychological evaluations, endless medical records. But for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Months passed. Treatments were experimental, painful. Some days I could barely move. Other days I felt a glimmer of something miraculous happening within my body. The research team became my second family, scientists and doctors who saw me not as a victim, but as a potential breakthrough. "Your genetic mutation," Dr. Harris, the lead researcher, would tell me, "it's unique. Most would see it as a curse. We see it as an opportunity." Meanwhile, my biological family's silence was deafening. No calls, no messages. Maria's graduation photos continued to haunt me, a reminder of the life I was supposed to have, the future that had been so casually discarded. But I was changing, not just physically, but in ways no one could have predicted. Each treatment, each research session was transforming me from a patient to something more, a potential savior for others with similar genetic challenges. "We're close to something groundbreaking," Dr. Harris would say, his excitement barely contained. "Your body is responding in ways we've never seen before." As the first year of treatment concluded, I made a decision. This wouldn't be my defeat. This would be my revolution. Little did my family know, the girl they had written off was about to become something they could never have imagined. The girl they left behind was learning to rise, to fight, to become a beacon of hope for those who had been told their genetic fate was sealed. My journey was just beginning, and the world had no idea what was coming. The research lab became my sanctuary, a place where my genetic condition transformed from a death sentence to a scientific marvel. 3 years had passed since my family had essentially abandoned me, and every moment was a testament to human resilience. Dr. Harris called me in early one morning, his usually composed demeanor crackling with barely contained excitement. "Elena," he said, spreading genetic charts across the conference table, "your body is doing something unprecedented." The experimental treatment had revealed something extraordinary. My unique genetic mutation, once considered a devastating flaw, was actually showing remarkable adaptive capabilities. Where most Huntington's patients would deteriorate, my cells were developing unprecedented neural protective mechanisms. "We're looking at a potential breakthrough in genetic medicine," Dr. Harris explained, his hands tracing the complex molecular diagrams. "Your genetic structure is essentially learning to fight itself." Each treatment became a carefully orchestrated dance of medical innovation. I was no longer just a patient. I was a living research project, a beacon of hope for genetic research. The medical team treated me with a combination of scientific curiosity and profound respect. Dr. Rodriguez, a brilliant neurogenetics specialist, would often marvel at my progress. "Most patients would be wheelchair-bound by now," she'd say, reviewing my latest test results. "But you're defying every medical expectation." My body was becoming a testament to human adaptability. Muscle strength that should have been deteriorating was instead showing signs of regeneration. Neurological tests revealed neural pathways rebuilding themselves in ways that challenged everything medical science understood about genetic disorders. During this time, I made a decision. I would not just be a passive recipient of treatment. I would become a medical professional myself. The university initially hesitated. A student with a progressive genetic disorder pursuing a medical degree seemed counterintuitive. But Dr. Harris and my research team saw something different. They saw potential. "Your lived experience," Dr. Harris told me during one of our strategy meetings, "is just as valuable as any medical textbook. You understand this condition in a way no textbook ever could." My medical journey began. Part-time studies, combined with ongoing research, became my new normal. Each lecture, each medical text was studied with a passion born from survival. I wasn't just learning medicine. I was rewriting its understanding of genetic conditions. My Aunt Elena continued to be my strongest supporter. "You're proving them wrong," she'd say, her eyes filled with pride. "Not just your family who abandoned you, but everyone who ever doubted you." The medical community began to take notice. Conference presentations about my case drew international attention. Where most saw a tragic genetic condition, I was becoming a symbol of hope, of medical possibility. 3 years into my research and medical studies, something remarkable happened. The experimental treatment that had been developed partially through my unique genetic response showed promising results for other Huntington's patients. "We're seeing neural regeneration in preliminary trials," Dr. Rodriguez announced during a critical research presentation. "Mechanisms developed from Elena's unique genetic adaptation are showing potential in slowing, and in some cases, partially reversing neurological deterioration." My personal triumph was becoming a broader medical breakthrough. Meanwhile, whispers of my progress began to reach my family. Maria, now working in a corporate marketing role, heard rumors about her sister's medical breakthrough. My parents caught glimpses of scientific publications mentioning my name. But I wasn't doing this for their validation. I was doing this for every patient who had been told their genetic fate was sealed. By the time I completed my medical specialization, focusing on neurogenetics, I was no longer just a patient. I was a leading specialist, my own body a living testament to medical innovation. My first major research paper was published in one of the most prestigious medical journals. The title was simple yet profound: Genetic Adaptation, a New Perspective on Neurological Disorder Management. Dr. Harris stood beside me during the publication celebration. "You're not just changing your own narrative," he said, "you're changing medical understanding." The irony wasn't lost on me. The family that had once considered me a burden was now hearing about a medical breakthrough that carried my name. Every conference, every publication was another nail in the coffin of their earlier dismissal. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about hope. About showing that genetic conditions weren't a death sentence, but potentially a pathway to understanding human adaptability. As I prepared for the next phase of research, a larger medical center offering me a comprehensive research position, I reflected on my journey. From a scared 19-year-old facing a devastating diagnosis to a leading medical specialist, I had transformed not just myself, but the very understanding of genetic medicine. My body, once considered a limitation, had become my greatest strength. The invitation arrived on a crisp autumn morning, an international medical conference where I was set to present our groundbreaking research on genetic adaptation. As I prepared my presentation, a familiar name caught my eye on the attendee list: Martinez. My family was coming. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation. Researchers, medical professionals, and international specialists filled the room, their eyes fixed on the stage where I would soon share our revolutionary findings. I adjusted my white coat, a symbol of everything I fought to become. Dr. Harris gave me a reassuring nod from the front row. "You're ready," he mouthed silently. As I began my presentation, the room fell into a hushed silence. Genetic charts, molecular diagrams, and breakthrough treatment protocols filled the massive screen behind me. But this wasn't just a scientific presentation. This was my story. Genetic disorders have long been viewed as predetermined paths. I began, my voice steady and confident. But what if we could rewrite that narrative? I spoke about my personal journey, the diagnosis that was supposed to be a death sentence, the experimental treatments, the unexpected cellular adaptations. Each slide was a testament to human resilience, to the possibility of medical miracles. Halfway through my presentation, I noticed them. My parents, my sister, seated in the back of the conference hall, their faces a mixture of shock, pride, and something else, remorse. The presentation concluded to thunderous applause. Colleagues rushed forward with questions, with congratulations. But my eyes were fixed on my family. They approached cautiously, as if I might disappear if they moved too quickly. "Elena," my mother began, her voice trembling. We had no idea." I stood my ground, professional, composed. "No," I replied quietly, "you didn't." My father, once so dismissive, now looked smaller, defeated. "The research you've done," he stammered, "it's incredible." Maria, my sister, stepped forward. Her perfectly pressed suit and corporate polish seemed suddenly insignificant compared to the medical breakthrough I just presented. "How?" she asked simply. "How did you do this?" I couldn't help the slight smile that crossed my lips. by not giving up, by believing in myself when no one else did. The medical community surrounded me, congratulating me, discussing potential collaborations. My family watched, outsiders to this world I created, a world where my supposed weakness had become my greatest strength. Later that evening, a private dinner with the conference's key researchers. Dr. Harris raised a glass. To Dr. Elena Martinez, he announced, who has potentially changed the landscape of genetic medicine forever. My family sat at a separate table watching. I could see the conflict in their eyes. Pride, regret, a desperate desire to reconnect. As the evening wound down, my mother approached me. Her hands were shaking. "We were wrong," she said, the words seemingly torn from her. So completely wrong. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. Yes, I agreed quietly, you were. But it wasn't a moment of bitter triumph. It was a moment of understanding, of closure. "Your Aunt Elena," my father spoke up, "she never stopped believing in you, never stopped fighting for you." I thought of my beloved aunt, the woman who had been my true family when my biological family had abandoned me. The woman who had held my hand through the darkest moments, who had seen my potential when everyone else saw only a diagnosis. "She was the only one who saw me," I replied simply. The next day, a surprising invitation, a joint research proposal, not from my family, but from the medical center where I now worked. They wanted to expand the genetic adaptation research to create a comprehensive program that could help countless patients. My sister approached me afterwards. "Can we talk?" she asked. We sat in a quiet conference room. The tension was palpable. "I'm sorry," Maria said, her voice breaking. "We were so focused on my success, on the traditional path, that we couldn't see yours." I listened, not with the anger of the past, but with the compassion of someone who had learned that true strength comes from understanding, not from resentment. "I don't need your apology," I told her, "but I'm willing to move forward." The research continued. Each breakthrough was another chapter in a story of survival, of hope. My genetic condition, once considered a curse, was now a beacon of medical possibility. Years of rejection had taught me something profound. That family isn't about blood, but about support, about believing in someone's potential. My Aunt Alina, now retired, would often say, "They may have given up on you, but the universe never did." As I looked out over the medical research center, a place I now led, a place that was changing lives, I realized she was right. My journey wasn't just about overcoming a genetic disorder. It was about proving that our greatest limitations can become our most extraordinary strengths. The Martinez family had once written me off as a burden. Now I was writing medical history, and this was only the beginning. The beeping of hospital monitors faded into a distant hum as I stared out the window, my body weak but my spirit unbroken. Outside, the world continued its dance of life, oblivious to the battle raging inside my own skin. It was the day of my sister Elena's graduation, and here I was, alone in a sterile hospital room, fighting a rare autoimmune condition that threatened to consume me. My name is Olivia Martinez, and at 24, I was supposed to be starting my life, not fighting for its very existence. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Elena would be walking across the stage, receiving accolades and applause, I was preparing for a life-altering surgery that could either save me or end me. I remember the day my parents made their choice. The doctors had explained the critical nature of my condition, the urgent need for an experimental treatment that could potentially halt the progression of my disease. But Elena's graduation was in 2 weeks, and my parents couldn't bear to miss it. "We'll reschedule the surgery," my mother had said, her eyes avoiding mine. "It's just a few weeks. You'll be fine." Fine. The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Those few weeks became months, and my condition deteriorated rapidly. By the time they finally paid attention, the window for the most effective treatment had nearly closed. My father, a successful businessman, seemed more concerned about the potential disruption to the family's perfect image than my actual survival. "You've always been the complicated one," he'd muttered, more to himself than to me. Elena, my younger sister, hadn't even tried to hide her discomfort. She was too busy preparing for her big moment, too excited about her future to be bothered by my medical crisis. The family had always favored her, the golden child, the one who seemed to effortlessly achieve everything she touched. As I lay in the hospital bed, I made a silent promise to myself. I would survive. Not for them, but for me. The surgery was brutal. Experimental treatments often are. For weeks, I fought through pain, through uncertainty, through the crushing weight of feeling completely alone. The medical team became my family. Dr. Thompson, my primary physician, was more supportive than my own blood relatives. "You're stronger than you know," he would tell me during his rounds. "Your body is fighting, and so are you." Slowly, miraculously, I began to heal. The experimental treatment worked better than anyone had expected. My body, once a battlefield of chronic illness, started to recover. But the emotional scars ran deeper than any physical wound. I decided to channel my pain into purpose. If I survived this, I would become a doctor. Not just any doctor, but one who would understand what it meant to be truly seen, truly cared for. 5 years passed. I graduated at the top of my medical school class, specializing in rare autoimmune conditions, the very disease that had nearly claimed my life. My research caught the attention of some of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country. I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece. The weak, forgotten daughter had transformed into Dr. Olivia Martinez, a rising star in medical research and treatment. My published papers, my groundbreaking research, these became my revenge, my statement to a family that had once written me off. But fate, it seemed, was not done with me yet. The call came on a crisp autumn morning. My father's voice was different, hesitant, almost broken. "Olivia," he said, and I could hear something I hadn't heard in years. Was it fear? "Elena's sick," he continued. "The doctors say they don't know what's wrong." I should have felt a moment of vindication, a chance to show them what it felt like to be ignored, to be left alone during a medical crisis. But I was a doctor now. I had taken an oath to heal, to save lives. "Tell me everything," I said, my professional mask sliding into place. As he described Elena's symptoms, a chill ran down my spine. The signs were eerily familiar. A rare, aggressive autoimmune condition that mirrored my own diagnosis from years ago. The very condition I had spent my entire medical career studying. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. Little did they know that the daughter they had once forgotten was now the only person who could potentially save the sister who had been chosen over her. My fingers traced the small scar on my arm, a reminder of my own battle, now transformed into my greatest strength. I was no longer that vulnerable patient. I was Dr. Olivia Martinez, and I was about to face the ultimate test of my professional and personal journey. The game was about to change, and this time I was in control. The hospital corridors felt different this time. No longer was I the vulnerable patient, but a respected physician walking with purpose. Elena's medical file was open on my tablet, each test result and symptom a puzzle I was determined to solve. Dr. Michael Chen, the attending physician, looked up as I approached. "Dr. Martinez," he greeted me, a hint of respect in his voice. "I've reviewed the case. It's complicated." I knew complicated. I had lived complicated. Elena looked nothing like the confident graduate I remembered. Pale, thin, her once vibrant eyes now dull with pain and fear. When our eyes met, I saw something I had never seen before. Vulnerability. "You're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I pulled up a chair, my professional demeanor masking the storm of emotions beneath. "Tell me everything," I said, my tone clinical yet compassionate. The diagnosis was eerily similar to my own. A rare autoimmune condition that had progressed rapidly. The irony was not lost on me. The same disease that had nearly killed me now threatened my sister's life. My parents sat in the corner, a study in contrasts. My father looked defeated, my mother's perfectly manicured hands trembling slightly. They watched me with a mixture of hope and desperation, a far cry from the dismissive attitude they'd shown during my own medical crisis. "We need an aggressive treatment plan," I told the medical team, "and I want to lead it." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "It's an extremely complex case. The risks are calculated," I interrupted. "I've spent my entire career studying this exact condition." The next few days were a blur of consultations, research, and intense medical strategizing. I poured every ounce of my knowledge, every lesson learned from my own battle, into Elena's treatment. During a late-night consultation, Elena broke the years of silence between us. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for everything, for not being there when you were sick." I could have unleashed years of pain, of rejection. Instead, I chose something harder, compassion. "We're going to get through this," I replied, adjusting her IV. The treatment was experimental, pushing the boundaries of current medical understanding. Each procedure was a delicate dance between hope and science. I remembered my own journey, the fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of being utterly alone. But Elena wasn't alone. Not anymore. My parents watched in awe as I worked. Gone was the forgotten daughter they once dismissed. I was a force of medical expertise, each decision calculated, each intervention precise. "How did you become so brilliant?" my father asked one evening, his voice a mixture of pride and regret. "You don't get to take credit for this," I said quietly. "This was my journey, my survival." The medical team was skeptical. The condition was aggressive, the chances of full recovery slim. But I had beaten these odds before. I knew every nuance, every potential complication. Days turned into weeks. Elena's condition stabilized, then slowly improved. Each positive test result was a small victory, each improved scan a testament to my dedication. One particularly challenging night, as I reviewed Elena's latest test results, my mother approached me. "I never understood," she said, her voice breaking. "How strong you were. How much you survived." I didn't respond immediately. Some wounds take more than words to heal. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A combination of treatments I had developed during my own research, treatments that combine traditional medicine with cutting-edge immunological approaches. "It's working," Dr. Chen confirmed, looking at the test results. "Remarkably well." Elena's recovery wasn't just medical, it was transformative. With each passing day, she grew stronger, more vibrant. And something else was happening. A fragile reconnection between us. She began asking about my research, my journey. For the first time, she saw me, not as the forgotten sister, but as a medical professional who had turned personal tragedy into triumph. "I want to understand," she told me one afternoon. "Everything you went through. How you survived." I shared my story, not with bitterness, but with the calm understanding of someone who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. My parents watched this transformation, silent witnesses to a healing that went beyond the physical. As Elena's condition continued to improve, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about medical treatment. This was about healing, of a body, of a relationship, of years of unspoken pain. The final test results were nothing short of miraculous. Elena was not just recovering, she was thriving. The experimental treatment had worked better than anyone could have predicted. "You saved my life," Elena said, tears in her eyes. I thought about the little girl who had been left behind, the patient who had been ignored, the doctor who had risen from the ashes of family rejection. "No," I replied, "I saved myself first, and in doing so, I found the strength to save you." The journey was far from over. But for the first time, there was hope. Real, tangible hope. As I looked at Elena, at my parents, I knew that some wounds could heal, some bridges could be rebuilt, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet, persistent power of compassion and professional excellence. The next chapter was about to begin. 1 year later, the transformation was complete, both medical and personal. Elena had changed dramatically. No longer the self-absorbed sister who once prioritized her graduation over my life. She was now a medical research assistant, working alongside me in the same hospital where I had once fought for my survival. "I want to understand everything," she told me one morning, reviewing patient files together. "Not just the medical science, but your journey." The hospital had become more than just a workplace. It was a testament to resilience, to the power of turning personal pain into professional purpose. My research on autoimmune conditions had gained international recognition. The experimental treatment that saved Elena was now being studied as a potential breakthrough for similar conditions. Medical journals featured my work. Conferences invited me to speak. A far cry from the forgotten daughter I once was. But success was never about vindication for me. It was about making a difference. During a particularly challenging case, Elena witnessed something that would change her perspective forever. A young patient, fighting a similar condition to the one that had nearly claimed my life, was struggling. "How do you stay so calm?" she asked me, watching me interact with the patient. I smiled, remembering my own journey, because I've been exactly where she is. Every patient is more than just a medical file. They're a story of survival. My parents' transformation was perhaps the most surprising. My father, once a distant businessman more concerned with appearances, had become a quiet supporter of my work. He'd established a foundation supporting medical research for rare autoimmune conditions, inspired by my journey. I was blind, he'd admitted during a family dinner. The words were simple, but carried the weight of years of regret. My mother had changed too. She now volunteered at support groups for families dealing with chronic illnesses, sharing our story. A story of hope, of resilience. The hospital became our shared ground. Elena and I, once separated by family dynamics, were now united by a common purpose. She was learning, growing, understanding the depth of medical compassion. "I never knew the weight of what you went through," she confessed one evening. "How lonely it must have been." I thought about those dark days in the hospital, abandoned, fighting for my life, but I no longer felt anger. Instead, I felt a sense of peace. "Every challenge is an opportunity," I told her, "to learn, to grow, to become stronger." My research continued to push boundaries. We were developing treatments that could potentially help thousands of patients fighting similar conditions. Each breakthrough was a small victory, a testament to the power of perseverance. The medical community took notice. Invitations to present at international conferences, collaborations with leading research institutions. My work was making a real difference. But the most significant transformation was happening within our family. During a hospital fundraiser, my parents watched as Elena and I presented our joint research. The pride in their eyes was unmistakable. Not the superficial pride of past achievements, but a deep, genuine appreciation for who we had become. "We were wrong," my father said later that evening, "about so many things." I didn't need elaborate apologies. Actions spoke louder than words. Elena's own journey of redemption was profound. She had become passionate about patient care, understanding that medicine was about more than just scientific knowledge. It was about compassion, about seeing the human behind the medical condition. "I want to specialize in autoimmune research," she told me one day, "to help people like you helped me." The irony was not lost on me. The sister who once overlooked my medical crisis was now dedicating her life to understanding and treating such conditions. Our research team became a family of its own, diverse, supportive, united by a common goal of pushing medical boundaries. One particular morning, a breakthrough came that would change everything. A new treatment protocol that could potentially revolutionize how we approach autoimmune conditions. "We did this together," I told Elena, looking at the preliminary research results. She squeezed my hand. The gesture spoke volumes of sisterhood, of healing, of understanding. As I looked around the research lab, I realized that my greatest achievement wasn't the medical breakthroughs or the professional recognition. It was the ability to transform pain into purpose, rejection into resilience. My life had come full circle. The forgotten daughter, the patient fighting for survival, was now a beacon of hope for countless others. Some stories, I often told my patients, are not about how you fall. They're about how you rise. And rise we did.